Good morning. We are now recording. I am Kirsten Van Wagner with Vanguard, and I am excited to moderate this session for you this morning. Welcome to the role of self-determination and assessment in the transition planning process, presented by Julianne Hunter of John Creek High School. Before we get started, we're going to review some of the features that you have in Teams. Let me have Julianne, if you could please share that first slide for me.
Is it not advancing?
Hold on. There we go.
Okay, it's lagging when I advance it, I believe.
Okay. And with all technology, we have a moment. Sorry, give us just a moment.
Can you see it? This one?
I am actually not seeing any of your screen. Can someone type in the chat for me? Are you guys seeing her screen? No. Okay. There we go. Perfect. So could you go to the next slide for me, please? Thank you. All right, so I know a lot of you are very familiar with Teams as we've been using it for quite some time. For this session, please use the chat feature. If you have any questions, we will gather them and then share them at different points throughout the presentation. We already do have your microphones muted for you. If you click on the ellipsis for the more actions, which is in the next slide, this is where you can go if you have any audio setting issues, which it's under device settings. If you end up needing additional information on how to join or help someone else join, meeting details, to change the view or to add live captions or change your background, that information is there. Okay, so let's go to your first slide there, Julianne. There you go. All right, so to introduce you to your presenter, this is Julianne. She's a self-described boy mom with 2 sons in high school in a neighboring district. She has many years of experience as an IRR and ID classroom teacher and case manager, as well as 2 years experience working in the private sector with children with deaf blindness. Though this is her first year in her current role, she hopes to finish her master's degree, focusing on secondary transition services this April. She is passionate about her work and enjoys sharing knowledge with pre-service and in-service professionals, as well as anyone else who is eager to learn more. So without further ado, again, welcome the role of self-determination and assessment in transition planning services, Julianne Hunter of Johns Creek High School.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Good morning. I'm really excited to be here today. Dr. Van Wagner, can you hear me?
You are sounding clear. It's wonderful.
Fabulous. Okay. We are going to dive right in this morning. I wanted to, if you wouldn't mind, take a moment to either scan this QR code or follow the bit.ly. This is a super short reading that will help us dig into our topics today. It should take you to, it's only about a page article. If you would please read, I'll give you about 5 minutes to do so. And then if you'll go to the Menti link at the bottom, we're going to create a word cloud together.
Both of those links are also dropped in the chat for you. For those of you just joining us, there is a link in the chat box, the bit.ly, and that you're reading that. And then after you're done reading, you'll go to the Menti site with that, using that code. Again, for those of you just joining us, there is a bit.ly link in the chat box, which will take you to a reading, and that's what everyone's doing right now. And then after you're done reading, you'll go to the website below using the code.
So we can just take a look at the word cloud that we're creating together. In one word or phrase, what could that child have learned if he or she had been involved in the annual party planning? I really like the responses that are showing up: advocacy, self-advocacy, initiative, organization. All of these contribute to the whole child, which is what we're going to be talking about today as it relates more specifically to transition planning and what that looks like from the early stages all the way through 12th and beyond. I'm so excited that you signed up and you're here to learn with me today about the role of self-determination and assessment in the transition planning process. As you can see from this graphic here, there are a lot of moving parts in the process of transitioning to adulthood. And for any of you who maybe have adult children or can recall your own transition to adulthood, it's kind of a big deal. It comes with a lot of emotion, a lot of anxiety about change and about the unknown. So I really appreciate and value the black speech bubbles in the corners of this image. As a gentle reminder that our students should also be contributing to their own future planning. Today, I'm going to share some more information about two of the big bubbles. The yellow bubble at the top in the center, north, if you will, if you're thinking about looking at a compass, transition assessment. And the purplish bubble in the bottom right-hand corner, southeast, if you will, if you geography people, student-centered transition planning. So following today's presentation, it's my hope that you will know more about and be able to support and empower your students with disabilities toward living enviable lives. In my master's program, you know, one of my professors is often talking about living an enviable life. And I don't know if it's something I ever really thought about our kids having the opportunity to do. But I think it's really important, if not more important, than their neurotypical peers. You will be able to recognize the role that age-appropriate transition assessments play in the design of a transition plan. Hopefully you'll realize how your students can take a more active role in their IEP meetings, especially when you're discussing transition. And I hope that you will envision the bigger picture of that whole child by beginning with the end in mind for post-secondary outcomes. So expecting kids to take an active role in the IEP process means we have to do a lot more than simply just invite them to attend their meeting. In my personal experience, I spent about 12 years as an 8th grade case manager, and I worked with countless students who were completely unaware that they had an IEP until we were getting ready to transition to high school. You know, some of them were shocked, some of them were angry, and I feel like it's really important that we start this process sooner so that they can be prepared to take an active role in their future planning. And it's our responsibility to teach them how to do that. In the case study, in a case study that was referenced in the Cake on Fire article, what you read today is an excerpt from that article, but it is a longer study. And Researchers observed 109 middle and high school IEP teams meetings to determine who was typically talking. And this image represents their findings. Of course, the special education teachers ourselves were speaking over half the time because we have lots of information to share and lots of wisdom to impart in those meetings. The family spoke about 15% of the time, but what really stuck with me is that red number at the top, that the students spoke 3% of the meeting time. And that's if they were invited to attend and speak at all. What's not reflected here is that during 2% of those meetings, no one spoke at all. It was quiet in the meeting. Either papers were being shuffled or people were thinking, but no one spoke at all. And so in looking at this, that means that the time the student contributed to his or her own IEP planning was greater only than the time that it was silent. Let that sink in. So this is big. How do we bring our students into the IEP conversation? We can begin this process by asking ourselves the self-assessment questions that you see on this screen here. Do we encourage students to become involved in their meetings? Does this involvement begin at an early age? If so, how early? Do we allow students to help decide whom to invite to their IEP meetings? Think about related service providers and additional support personnel. Do we give students opportunities to be responsible for their goals or even tracking their own data? Do students know that IEP meetings are for them and that the intent is to design a plan that'll help them be successful in school and in life? About a week ago in my workings here at Johns Creek, I encountered a student who had been invited to his IEP meeting, and we were having a conversation. He was saying like he was dreading it. He did not want to go to this meeting at all. And I asked him why not, and he said, the teachers are only going to say the bad stuff and I'm just going to get in trouble. And I reminded him that he might rather change his perspective a little bit and want to be there so that he could say his side. You know, he was like, I'm not doing well in math. They're just going to tell my mom she's going to be mad. And I was like, well, what would you say? And so we kind of role played and went through this, scenario together. And he was able to say like, yeah, maybe I should be there. Maybe I do need to say that I'm working hard and I'm trying my best in math. And then my mom won't be so mad. So this is really about shifting their focus. And to do that, we have to shift our focus first. Person-centered planning with the person at the center originated in the medical model. So this is an idea about having the person, the patient, help determine their plan of care. And when we're talking about organizing supports and services, we want that person with a disability or that aging adult to be able to live and thrive for as long as they're able. We certainly want our students to thrive, but their families want to see them thrive as well. And as I said before, living an enviable life. So this process is directed by the person who receives the support. And in our case, that's the student. Person-centered planning helps that person learn to construct and articulate their vision of their future. So our students without disabilities typically go through this process pretty naturally, and their families start to shift that responsibility to the young adult. The kiddo is driving, maybe goes to the grocery store for the family. Those kinds of things happen naturally. But for our students with IEPs, this idea and the skills that surround person-centered planning have to be intentionally and explicitly taught. So let's talk a little bit about how to do that. Another quick story, sorry, I'm a storyteller, so I'm trying to watch my time too, but I have a 9th grade son and a 10th grade son, and my eldest, I needed to mail back a package to UPS. He's pretty good on the computer. And so I was like, hey, why don't you go upstairs and print out this label? It's in the email, and print out this label and then enter the stuff in the UPS site so that we can go drop this package off and return it following the holidays. So, you know, he's gone a really extended period of time, and I'm thinking, what in the world is he doing? So I like sneak up there to the, you know, two boys in the house. So I sneak up there to the office to find out what's going on. And he's holding this box, this package, and he's like measuring it with his hand and like looking, and I'm like, son, what are you doing? And he says, well, it's asking me for the measurements and I don't know them. And I was like, when, pray tell, have you ever seen Mama measure the dimensions of a box with her hands? And might there be a tool that we could go and fetch somewhere in the house that would assist us with this process? So I think some of those things, you know, do need to be explicitly taught. I made an assumption about his level of knowledge about, you know, measuring something in inches, that he would think what I thought, but he did not, because of his lack of experience in that area. Another quick story I can tell is about a family I was working with recently, and the mom was explaining that she and her husband have a really specific way that they like to load the dishwasher. And so she was doing these things to make sure her daughter understood how to load the dishwasher. And she was saying that she was like, I'm watching her struggle to figure out how to like Tetris fit these plates and bowls in the dishwasher, and they're not working. And I said, what did you do? And she said, well, I went over and showed her how we do it. And she kept asking. And I said, you know, what would happen if you perhaps next time allowed her to kind of problem solve through it, or if you prompted her through it with questioning rather than doing it for her? And, you know, a light bulb went on for that mom. So this is really about our role as facilitators in this process. I was super excited to hear our keynote speaker this morning talk about a little bit about self-determination theory. Basically, it refers to the right of the person and their capacity to have control over their own lives and be self-governing. So similar to what the keynote speaker said this morning, it's basically centers around these three human needs. The need to deal with one's environment effectively, or competence, relatedness, which is what we're all trying to create in this virtual school setting, the need to feel a sense of belonging with our school and our community and our teachers and our peers. And then that autonomy, or the need to feel in control of your own life and like what you say can actually happen, and believing enough that that could be the case. So simply stated, self-determination means acting or causing something to happen in your own life. Self-determined people know their own strengths and weaknesses, and they make decisions, and maybe they set a goal and then they problem solve through to get to that goal. Maybe they met it in full, maybe they met it in part, maybe they didn't meet it at all, and they need to revamp that goal. That's part of what this is about. Self-determination enables that person to believe, once again, that they can be the causal agent in their own life. Just yesterday, I spoke with a family. He is a senior, and the dad was talking about emailing the case manager this and emailing the counselor and all these things. And I asked Dad perhaps if he would consider sitting his son down at the computer and coaching him through that process, and having his son generate and send the emails, even if he needed Dad to tell him what to type. That's perfectly fine. Again, it's about shifting that responsibility to the child so that the child can be more self-governing. And that even goes for a little bitty. If you have a kindergartner or a second grader, you know, to what extent are they able to own this process in their own lives? Of course, this does not happen overnight, but if we consider these ideas and we have this in the back of our minds when we're planning, then it will be less like the young adult in Why Is This Cake on Fire? When I think back, when I was in my 20s, and maybe this is some of you too, I called my mom and dad to ask them, like, how do I tell if this chicken is done? Or, you know, how do I file my taxes? I called my mom if I got in an accident on the highway, even though I was in Atlanta and she was in Florida. because that problem solving piece, those working through challenges and barriers one faces as they pop up in real time, is really important for all of us, not just kids with IEPs. So I really want to encourage you to consider, when you look at whether or not independent living goals are an appropriate addition to the transition plan, is that student in control of his or her own life? How reliant is he or she on coaching or other strategies that we provide? And if those are removed, how independent would that student be? So I think we often assume only the most significantly impaired students require independent living goals, but I want you to really consider that when we talk about self-determination and when we get to assessment in just a few minutes. To many of our students, this IEP process and the whole meeting might appear awkward and foreign, just like the birthday party that they don't plan or attend. But students need to be involved from an early age in this process, just as soon as transition starts to emerge in the conversations. That might mean the transition from pre-K to elementary school. What could that kiddo share in his or her meeting, or what questions might he or she have about starting elementary school? Could they come to the meeting and ask those things? From 5th grade, moving to middle school, big change. Parents have lots of fears and concerns. Probably so do those children. So, might we be able to include them in that meeting and in that process of transitioning and finding out, learning, what does that mean to me? What does it mean to be me in a different building, in a different setting with new teachers and a new case manager? And then, as I said before, certainly moving from 8th grade to high school, which is when many of these children are first introduced to these thoughts and ideas. So we need to be thinking about what foundational groundwork is needed at each age and stage of this game. Let's take a look at what some elementary teachers from Virginia's Department of Education, they have a self-determination project. Let's find out what they have to say about this idea and how it impacts students. I hope you will have sound.
Well, I think that students need to know what it is they're working on in order to achieve their goals. I think that for them to feel a part of it holds them accountable for
Julianne, it looks like you got muted somehow, and that's how we were hearing the video. It's okay, just unmute.
Sorry.
and meeting your own goals, I think feels a little bit different than setting and meeting someone else's goals.
It's really important in elementary schools because that's where we build confidence and nurture the children. And if we can provide them with tools to take to the middle school and then on to the high school, it's going to help them. And the earlier that they can learn those type of skills, the better.
The I'm determined and self-determination skills are important at an early age because as the students get older, they're going to be required to participate more in their IEP meetings. And at the high school level particularly, they're going to be attending the meetings, and they are the best ones that can tell you what they need and what they don't need, instead of having it being an adult directed plan. It needs to be a student directed plan. We can assume one student with one disability needs one accommodation, and we can't make it standard across the board. The student has to be able to participate, and the best way to do that is if they learn now at this age how to speak for themselves and recognize what helps them and what doesn't help them. They're better to communicate that as they go up through grade levels.
The sooner we can get them involved and understand that they have a disability, but that's okay. They don't feel that they're being looked at as being different. They know they have a disability, that they have areas of weakness. But we're here for them and we provide them the support that they need.
I guess my ultimate priority is for them to, the students to be sure of themselves and sure of their learning and aware of their learning style. I want them, when they transition to the middle school, to be able to speak for themselves and not let a piece of paper speak for them. I want them to be as organized as possible. By this age, they should be responsible enough and be able to handle instructions given to them, or say, hey, wait a minute, I need this, or I'm not sure of what you're asking. This is the kind of learner I am. This is what I need. So if the student is aware of what they need to do and what their needs are, then they can speak for themselves, and it's very helpful to them.
You guys, I'm sorry that the volume on that is so inaudible. I hope you were able to rely a little bit on the captions for the main message. And then of course, when I link this presentation later, I can make sure that you have this, this link to the slide and that video. But basically, the teachers were saying that self-awareness and self-determination is so beneficial to our students. And the sooner that we begin this process, the better off they'll be in the long run. This whole theory, this whole idea and research surrounding it has really come about in the last 10 years. And it's really more of a more central topic in special education literature. Research is showing that, you know, teaching students to take control of their life is becoming a hallmark of providing a comprehensive special education service plan. You know, just like their peers, as you can see here, students with more significant disabilities who lead their IEPs develop stronger self-determination skills, and they know more about post-secondary transition because they've been a part of it all along. And I really liked this image when I was developing this presentation, because like, I'm the IEP, you know, it's an individualized education plan. And that person who may or may not be attending the meeting and may or may not be invited to speak or share, that's the person that we're planning for. So it's important that we teach them how to be involved in that process. We teach them goal setting and goal attainment, and we teach them how to overcome barriers that they might face through their own self-advocacy. When we look kind of side by side at the differences between a traditional IEP meeting, which we have all attended, plenty of, and a student-led IEP on the left here, you know, this meeting style looks and feels really different for teachers and therapists and support staff. It feels really different for students and parents too. That's why I was saying it's a process. But in a student-led IEP, they're aware of the purpose for the meeting. They understand their disability, and they're able to share, you know, the contents of the meeting and what will be discussed. And they might even lead a portion of it with some help from their case manager or their family. And this can look like, it can look like a variety of things. So I want to talk about that next, and hopefully that'll, you know, help you to understand this a little bit better, this whole idea. So as we shift the focus from adult-centered to student-centered planning, it's important to keep in mind that all students are capable of actively participating in their IEP meeting in some way, shape, or form. We might have to get creative for some of our kiddos, but they're all capable of doing this. So our AAC users can introduce themselves and identify the meeting attendees for the group. Other students might write out or type out a meeting invitation to invite their family and their other team members that support scheduling. They might even write a thank you note. Thanks for coming and supporting my education, you know, mom or dad or whomever. So there are templates available for this, and your transition services teacher near you has other activities that could support the students, understanding their IEP, dissecting those things, graphing out, what they want to include, and then doing that. And the writing activity could easily tie into language arts class at any level. Some of our students might work with a case manager to make a vision board, like you see this young man is presenting here from a graphic he's able to share with the adults in the room. They might create a short PowerPoint of 2 or 3 slides, like my strengths, my needs, my goals, or they could even talk about their accommodations that they feel are helpful and what their future plans are and share those with their families. A lot of times, what the family wants them to do is not the same as what the child wants to do. So we're planning for the child's future, and that's what we need to make sure that we keep in mind. I am very sure that if we set the bar high, our students will not only rise to meet our expectations, but very often they'll surprise us. So again, here are, you might be thinking like, oh, they have to lead the whole meeting, and that may come for a handful of our students. But here are a few roles that students might take to help shift towards a more student-led planning effort. Maybe they can state which classes are challenging for them or which accommodations are the most helpful. Maybe they can identify 2 electives that they're interested in taking. This, will very likely start with introducing the team members and saying who your case manager is and who yourself is, but it can grow from there. And if we don't start at all, then it has the potential to turn into the "why is this cake on fire" analogy. One of today's learning targets was to envision the big picture by starting with the end in mind. So here are some questions you and your team might consider to help guide your work. The reason that we ask students questions about what they want to do and why we need them to prepare to be the causal agents of their own lives after high school is so that we can help them get to that end. With the necessary supports and services built into their IEP and their transition plan, these things are all very possible. Dr. Van Wagner, since we're talking about questions, are there a couple of questions that I might be able to answer at this stage of the presentation?
As of right now, no. The only question was, where do I get that shirt? And someone actually already found that link and posted it.
That's awesome.
But you've got a lot of really positive feedback for a lot of the points that you've been making, where I think everyone is just on board and agreeing with everything and kind of just taking it all in.
Oh my gosh, yay. Okay, fantastic. So we will dig into the other part of our topic, which is assessment. Thank you guys for hanging with me today. So one of the other guiding forces that is so big for our transition planning efforts is the use of age-appropriate transition assessments. The law says that transition planning is an ongoing process that's mandated by IDEA for all students in K through 12 programs who have an IEP. The purpose of a transition planning is to facilitate the students' movement from school, where they are now, to whatever comes next. And as we all know, this looks different. Even for 2 of us who are educators who ended up here at Johns Creek this year together, our journeys have looked very different. Some people are, have worked in other fields before coming here. Some people have gone to a community college or a 4-year college. Other people have, been in the military and come to education from there. So just like ourselves, we must think of our students in this same light. This flow chart shows kind of the process, starting with age-appropriate transition assessments at the top in that orange bar. This is how important they are. Everything starts with this. This type of assessment begins the ongoing process of collecting information each year about a student's strengths, needs, preferences, and interests as they relate to their future living, learning, and working environments, whatever those might be. So then you can see that those things are, are driven there. And then we move down to the green bar in the flow chart where we write their measurable post-secondary goals. Those are developed to support deficits in 3 areas, or 2 mostly. 2 are required on the left. Education training is 1. So what kind of program, education program, or training is necessary, or certification is necessary for them to move to the next point in their life? And then employment is the other one. What is necessary for them to get a job, work, be self-governing, be employed, be a contributing member of their society? And then I'll ask you once again to really consider independent living. Is it appropriate? What else does that student need? Can they take their medication each day? Do they have other things that they need to manage? Can they follow a budget? Those kinds of things. If so, then they are fine. But if not, then we really need to consider whether it's appropriate for them to have an independent living goal. For some students, this might be things that include their living arrangements or activities inside the home, such as getting dressed, hygiene, cooking a snack without burning the house down, and self-awareness. For others, this might include activities outside the home, such as driving or accessing the community by calling a taxi or Uber or Lyft service. It might be financial literacy. There's so much that goes into this, and your students and their learning needs and employment needs best. The reason that transition planning is as individual to a student as their IEP is because it's driven by their strengths, preferences, and needs. Down a step in the turquoise box, you can see how we then break that down into services and supports. What's needed to get that child to that end? This could be their day-to-day classroom instruction. It could be community-based experiences for some students. It could be work-based learning for some students. Any other supports that are necessary to maximize their independence. In the yellow box, we include a multi-year course of study. This is new this year, but again, their courses should start to align with where they're going in their post-secondary aspirations. Then in the red box, the annual IEP goals are written. The reason these follow the transition plan, I know this is like mind-blowing for me as well, but the reason these follow the transition plan is because often they can align with and support the student's overall development in each category. So if a student has plans to go to college after high school, maybe those goals and objectives address reading, math, language arts, and that sort, that will get them to, college ready. Conversely, if the student is going to join the workforce after high school, maybe those goals address executive functioning or time management and scheduling, following a schedule, or even social skills and pragmatics that our SLPs can help us with.
Julianne,
certainly, yes.
You have one question here.
Okay.
Is it okay to give fifth or sixth graders an interest or career assessment to assist with getting students involved at a younger age before 8th grade?
Oh my heavens, yes, 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 please do. If you need ideas for those, please contact the transition service teacher. I'm going to show you who that might be, but your zone high school has a transition services teacher, so you can just reach out to that person. I love it so much that you're already thinking about how you can do this at an earlier level. Yes, please. And then also something to think about that we've talked about today, this could even be self-determination or self-advocacy goals and objectives. So when we look at data collection, I tell my boys, and this is slightly, mom inappropriate, less teachery, but I tell them, I'm like, you change your mind like you change your underpants. It is like on a daily that you're into, no more Fortnite, now it's something else, right? So they're constantly changing and growing and developing and becoming their whole selves. And so I think it's so important that we continue to help this plan reflect the person that it is intended for. And then very last but not least, this is more for the high school folks, but that purple box at the bottom is when we start to coordinate with outside agencies. So this might mean inviting a representative from Voc Rehab to support someone, or it might be someone who has mental health needs and they would have a representative from an outside counseling program or a mental health treatment program to come to the IEP and answer their questions and help their family with whatever they're going to need when they leave our K-12 care. The most essential purpose for understanding transition assessment is to help students, like I said, learn about themselves, develop a clearer picture of their preferences, strengths, interests, and even their needs, to improve their self-advocacy skills over time while they have natural supports in place from us as a school system and their parents, and to become little by little more actively involved in this planning initiative. One of my favorite things to witness is as this plan evolves over time, students, when they first get into high school to when they graduate, this plan continues to become more robust and more filled out and exciting. We do transition assessments because our students are so unique. They cover lots of different areas, and just like in the classroom, there are two types of transition assessments. There are formal ones and informal ones. So the one in the question a few moments ago, can we give them a survey or a checklist, or you could even sit them down and interview them, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Those kinds of things, those conversations really start in kindergarten when we start exploring community helpers. We have kids in the high school now who are budding entrepreneurs, and they want to start their own online business because they can't go anywhere because of COVID. So those are the kinds of things that we want to say, okay, what do you need in order to do that? What skills do you need? What, do you know how to create your own website? Do you know how to, manage a budget? Talking about expenditures and things like that. So depending on the kiddo, that's why this looks different for every kiddo. And then as case managers, we put this updated information in summary form in the transition plan each year so that I can look back and see, wow, look at that. In 5th grade, this kiddo, and then in 8th grade, and then, oh my gosh, look at 12th grade. We've really done, this plan has become so much more sophisticated and robust, and this kiddo is really ready to start the next step in the rest of his or her life. So here is a very basic list of some formal transition assessments. This is not something that you have to be held to. This is not an exhaustive list by any stretch, but again, your transition services teacher can provide other ideas or links to more specific assessments for any of the students whom you serve. And then this is a list of informal transition assessments. Again, not an exhaustive list, and please consult your transition service teacher for guidance, but in some rare cases, I want to note that a student might be unable or might be less willing to discuss this kind of stuff with you. They don't know, or they don't want to share, or they're unable to articulate, or they don't have a button that says the one that they would like to push on their talker that really speaks to who they are. So in these instances, age-appropriate transition assessment can be based on a teacher observation. It can be based on input from the student's family, if you think that aligns, or it can even be based on, curriculum-based assessments and other things from the student's records. Our goal is simply to make every effort to ensure that transition assessments are appropriate to the student's age. So we don't want to give them, an elementary one if they're in high school, and to their aptitude. And we want to make sure, thirdly, that they're updated often. Again, we can be sensitive to the needs of our complex communication kiddos. Maybe your speech language pathologist would like to assist in helping to gather this information, or maybe your SLP could help the child prepare to participate in their meeting appropriately and arm them with the skills that they'll need to talk to adults. But just like in the classroom, both formal and informal are available in various formats. There are even some pictorial options if that's appropriate for the students you serve. And these can be adapted to read aloud and other modifications that your students might need. So your building level transition services teacher can provide other ideas if you need those. This is the recommended timeline from our department that we would like for you to use as the guide for updating annually. So at minimum, we'd like for that very first one, when they start this planning process in 8th grade, to be a formal assessment. And then our department suggests alternating that each year thereafter. If they remain beyond 12th grade, then they would have had formal, informal, formal, informal. They would finish with a formal assessment as they go and start their lives. And if they remain, then they would have 2 more years to alternate informal, informal once again. So as you can see, this would really build in that IEP over time, and you would be able to see the progression from the less mature ideas of what one wanted to be to the really like, I have a plan, I know where I'm going, and I can't wait to start. And if you're like me and you need things in multiple formats, this is the same as that timeline, but in a cycle. So you can see how it starts at the top with conducting a transition assessment. It goes through the process that I've described today, and then again with a transition assessment and keeping on going from there. So just providing that in an alternate format. If you're more of a cyclical person or more of a linear person, you have it in 2 different ways. As I mentioned before, I'm new to the transition department, so I am someone who likes to learn more on my own and dig deeper and read materials and really kind of discover how I can apply it to my own practice. I'm kind of nerdy like that, but if you are too, then my teammates and I have worked really hard this year to chunk this information into really small packages. And we've posted some really pertinent professional development webinars on Frontline this year. Taking your precious time into consideration, because we know how very busy you are, but there are currently 7 titles in there. They are housed in Frontline. You can find them by searching the district catalog for transition. But each of them is less than 20 minutes long. Most of them are 15 or under. And then you can see the 3rd bullet down today talks about age appropriate transition assessments for you, if you'd like more information on this topic from today. And the 5th one down talks about pathways to self-advocacy. And there are certainly other ones listed here that you may find of interest, especially if you're writing transition plans with students and families. This is the list I was referring to you about my teammates. So if you need this information, to request more information and support, we are hosting live question and answers twice a month. If you have burning questions as you're writing a plan, or if you get stuck, you can contact the person closest to you on this list in your zone's high school and obtain information. If you don't already, I wanted to add that I hope that you will follow me on Twitter at Julianne Hunty20. I post a weekly Transition Tuesday tweet on a variety of topics. A lot of them are related to these 2 topics, but it's all things transition planning. Some of them are related more to students, some are more geared for families, and some, of course, geared for case managers and educators, resources that you might find necessary. And then, of course, our coordinator is Miss Jennifer DeBerry Thompson, and her contact information is there if you were to have a really urgent concern about transition or were unable to get in touch with the building representative listed on the left. Dr. Van Wagner, I have one more thing to share, but are there any questions that have popped up in the chat that I might be able to answer as we are wrapping up?
There were two, but I think some of your colleagues have actually answered them for you. One question I have, are you planning on putting your presentation in the session folder? Okay, so
Yeah.
all of this will be available.
Yes,
Wonderful.
definitely. I know that first video wasn't playing very well, but I'm hopeful that when posted, people can access it on their own and it might be able to tune in a little better with their own computer audio. Fabulous. Thank you for your support. Okay. In the final minutes here that we have, I really hope that I know I'm a fast talker, but I'm really excited about this topic and passionate about presenting to you today. So I really hope that you've gained some new information and maybe a little bit of a new insight or reframing of your current perspective that you can take with you and implement into your practices with students across the district. And I hope you found this session a valuable use of your time this morning as we kick off the conference. So I wanted to share this quick video. This makes me very excited too. I do not know this young man, Nicholas, in the video, but I sure wish I did. This is just a little success story about self-determination and transition coming together as this young man begins his journey in the workplace after high school. So.
Hello? Is this Nicholas? Hi, Bridget. Sure, I'll take it. Yeah. Tomorrow to come in? Yeah, let me get back to you. I gotta call my dad. All right, bye.
Who just called you?
Walmart.
What's going on?
I got a position.
Doing what?
Guido.
A greeter? Wow.
I'm calling my dad. I got a job offer. I took it too. Hey, Dad, I just got a call from Walmart, and they want me to come in tomorrow at 10 o'clock. They offer me a position for Guido. And I said yes.
Good job, man. I'm proud of you. That's sweet.
So this is quite possible for every student that we work with in the schools across Fulton County with the implementation of a high quality transition plan and a few self-determination skills. Oh, sorry. That concludes my session. I will, as I said, post a copy of all the materials and resources as well as the full article in the team site so that you'll have access to that. Don't forget about the videos in Frontline and reach out to your transition teacher. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day of learning. Dr. Van Wagner?
Julianne, this was wonderful. Like many of your chat comments here, tears in the eyes for sure. Thank you so much for this wonderful and very informative presentation. I know I learned a lot. Thank you everyone for joining us today. If you can't use the QR code, the link for the survey, I just posted in the chat. And just as a reminder throughout the day, we would love for you guys to tweet out what you're learning or what you found meaningful. The hashtags are also in the chat. And if it's specific about this presentation, which I hope it is, also don't forget to tag Julianne in your post as well. But yes, please take a moment to fill out that survey. And again, thank you so much for joining us and have a wonderful session too.